Hello, and welcome to this virtual tour of the Basque Country and La Rioja, parts of Spain, with Cultivating Connections, travel planners, and Aaron Smith. And I'm Jesus Rapido, and I'm the CEO of Titanium Tours. And we are, Aaron's and Cultivating Connections travel planners preferred partner for all things Spain, Portugal, and France. So today I want to take you on an imaginary virtual tour. My job is to try to help you imagine yourselves in this parts of Spain. So I was born and raised in the southern Spain in Seville. This is very exciting for me to share some of my favorite sites in my own country. The Basque Country in La Rioja it's a beautiful area. It's poetic, it's country roads, it's medieval fishing villages, it's vineyards, lots of wine, obviously. It's beaches, it's wine, and it's food. Some of the best food in all of Spain you will find here in the Basque Country. So we're going to go around this region and discover some of the best wines and sites that it has to offer. And I'm going to suggest some of the wines and how you can get them here in the States. So turn on your imagination and let this pictures transport you to my home country. So this is the area that we're going to be talking about. So this is Spain. I was born and raised down here. And this is up here next to France is the Basque Country. And then right underneath it, you see it's this other region of La Rioja where the Rioja wine comes from. But this is all a very wine center area of the country. And it's also really beautiful. As you can see here, it's a very lush area of the country. Lots of coastline as well, just very dramatic coastlines and very beautiful landscapes. Very quaint little towns too, like you could see here. This is a butcher shop that you're looking at, Carniceria. And this very quaint buildings and very colorful and contrasty. It's kind of what you're going to see in the Basque Country of La Rioja. And again, it's very idyllic setting, lots of history, lots of also farms and farming, and also lots of fishing villages. So we'll go and explore this whole area. Again, very colorful. So if we were going on this virtual, if this was a virtual tour, I would always, suggest, so maybe on day one, we would visit this first winery, Lopez de Heredia. So for 131 years, 4 generations of the Lopez de Heredia family, they've devoted themselves to producing exceptional and unique wines. They're masterpieces which have achieved that which the founder of the company, Rafael Lopez de Heredia, defined in the late 19th century as the supreme Rioja. So vineyard care, scrupulous selection of grapes, aging in oak barrels in the heart of deep underground galleries, and then they later, age them in bottles, all contribute to making this incredible wines with their exceptional bouquet. And you can actually find them in the US for around $40 to $60. And you're going to see here a lot of, very eclectic, sort of, a mixture of the old and the new, the modern and the traditional. You can see it even in the buildings, but it's also in their processes of how they do things. So you can imagine yourself walking around the grounds in this magnificent winery. These are the oak barrels that you would see where they age the wine, which is just such impressive craftsmanship. Another really interesting winery is La Rioja Alta. So 5 families erected this winery in 1890 with the pursuit of quality, elegance, innovation, and evolution. They built a way of feeling and producing wines that continues to evolve today subtly and adapt into new tastes. They follow their own recipe based on their winemaking tradition and know-how. They make their own barrels and casks. They use manual racking, and they believe in long aging. And then they combine this with the most modern winemaking technology. Today, their wines are an international exemplar of the great wines of Rioja, and their brands are present in the best restaurants across the entire world. You can find their wines in the US for $40 to $60. And this would be a great place to, for example, if we were there in person, to have lunch and taste some of the local food. So one of the things that I'll point out here is how cool is those barrels that are like buried in the ground where they're aging their wine. Now, for switching a little bit our interests here, we would go and visit some of the history and some of the very, very old history of this area. So here is the Monastery of Kaynas. This Cistercian abbey is one of the first that was founded in Spain. It actually dates back to the year 1170 AD, so the 12th century, when Don Felipe Díaz de Haro, he was the Lord of Biscay IX, and his wife, Doña Aldonza Ruiz de Castro, they donated this land to the Cistercian nuns in the area so they could establish an abbey. The construction of the monastery was gradual. So they have actually 3 distinct stages. So you see a Romanesque portion, the oldest. You see a Gothic portion dated from the second half of the 13th century. And last, the expansion from the 16th century. It's a historical monument with a very unique blend of styles. And it's just enchanting and serene. Let me show you some of the pictures of the inside, in the courtyards and the porticos. Look at all the intricate details around the doors and the windows. This could be, this is one of the older sections, more in the Romanesque style, whereas the previous was more of a Gothic style. So it's quite breathtaking, and it's just relaxing and calm to be there. It's a beautiful sight. So if we were to stay in this region, my suggestion would be to stay at the Hotel Winery Marques de Riscal. This is a Frank Gehry building from 2006. It's a masterpiece that was built to house the hotel, which is also a pristine winery. It's since become a highly sought after luxury retreat. It mixtures, combines design, art, cuisine, wine, and a lush landscape that create a memorable overnight at the city of wine. And it is indeed a city of wine, between the fascinating hotel to the winery and vineyards which you can visit. There are several fine dining options, including a Michelin star restaurant. There's also a wine museum, and they do have a vinotherapy spa where you can get some wine-based treatments, which was created by the cosmetics brand Claudel, and they offer natural treatments which contain the extraordinary properties of the vine and the grape, which is a unique moment of pleasure involving all the senses. So in 1998, Marques de Riscal pioneered the idea of combining the production space with a space for leisure. So the production of the wine with a space for leisure with the hotel, and they created the City of Wine, which aims to raise awareness of wine, its history, culture, and philosophy. So the next morning we would visit the winery. This is the Marques de Riscal Winery, which is the oldest and most traditional of La Rioja. It opened for business in 1860 and is notable for its pioneering, innovative, and nonconformist techniques. Always a step ahead of the rest, but without forgetting the traditions. So, which is the history of this whole area, right? It's that blend of tradition with new processes, new architecture, new styles, new tastes. You can find the wines in the US for $20 to $90. So doing the same thing that we did the previous day, we combine a little bit of history here. This is Granja Nuestra Señora de Remeyuri. And in this place, which is surrounded by some of the oldest vineyards, carved into the rock is an ancient wine press, probably one of the oldest wine remains of La Rioja. The origin of this farm of Remeyuri is lost in time. It's a mystery, but there's a necropolis in the center of the property that indicates the existence of a village in the 10th century. Farm crops here are protected from wind and frost, and they enjoy an exceptional microclimate. If you can see, they have these tall mountains behind them, so it's really protected. And in this environment, remnants of prehistoric populations, Romans, Visigoths, Moors, and finally a medieval settlement speak of an agricultural activity since ancient times. Visiting this farm is like taking a journey through time with many stops in many eras. Let me show you some close-ups of the, some of the buildings in this farm, or one of the buildings in this farm. Another really must-have stop is the Monastery of Yusuf. This was declared World Heritage in 1997 by UNESCO. Yusuf is considered to be the cradle of the Spanish language and is a must-see in one of the most beautiful valleys in La Rioja. It's located at the end of a valley, and it dates from the 11th century, with some other remodeling in the 16th and the 18th century. An equestrian sculpture of San Millán dominates the building's main front, executed in the Baroque style. And then the church, built between 1504 and 1540, houses in medieval reredos. It's from the 12th century, as well as which is a cloth and hangs down by the altar, as well as a plateresque pulpit and a choir in the Greco-Roman style. So one of the jewels of Yusuf, it's the sacristy, which is in Rococo style, and with alabaster floors and frescoes. So you would notice that I've mentioned a lot of different architectural styles. So if you like architecture, this is a place where you are going to see just about all the main different architectural styles. We've talked about Rococo and Baroque and Plateresque and Greco-Roman style, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building here. And let me show you some of the courtyards inside this portico in the Gothic style. And here's another picture of that same portico from up on high. On our third day, we would visit this really super cool winery, Condes de los Andes Winery. So Bodegas Ollauri, Condes de los Andes, it's part of Ollauri's Barrio de Bodegas, or neighborhood of wineries, which is an area with underground family caves. There's 3 traditional buildings and a cluster of spectacular underground cellars. These have been excavated over the several centuries. And Conde de los Andes caves are Rioja's most impressive underground cellar system in terms of age, architecture, and dimensions, and they extend over 1 kilometer in length, so 0.70 of a mile. So the corridors are full of history, galleries that blend in with the darkness, jaw-dropping vaults and little nooks with special magnetism, cellars imbued with the ancient culture of wine. You can find their wines here in the US for $30 to $40. And you can see in the picture how you go down the stairs and there's all these passages and then the bottles are being aged here. Let me show you another picture. There's another picture of coming down into, the cave and different cellars and different, corridors. And let me show you just a couple more pictures of this because I think it's just really, really exciting and very different. So here's another one. You got the bottles there along the wall. And this is my final picture for Conde de los Andes. Again, the very spectacular, very unique kind of winery and aging system of caves. Another great stop in this area is the Wine Culture Museum. This is the Dinastía Vivanco Museum, and it was awarded World's Best Wine Culture Museum by UNESCO. So it's definitely a must stop where you can see some of the wine presses, some of the different machinery that are used, in the whole process of wine making. Here's another picture of the press, one of the presses. And here's some more of the things that you can see. So very, very cool, very a great stop. As we continue on our tour of the Basque Country and the Rioja region, here's another really unique winery, Senorio Darien Winery. It's situated in the northeast of Spain between Rioja and Bordeaux, right? So Bordeaux is right around the corner and once you get into France. So this Arenzano state occupies a valley formed by the last slopes of the Pyrenees Mountains, and it's divided by the winding waters of the river Ega. It's got a unique microclimate in the state, which create a great environment for vine growing. The Senorio Arenzano state has been recognized for the excellence of his vineyards since the 11th century, when the noble Sancho Fortuñones de Arenzano first produced wines on this property. In the 16th century, Mosén Lopez de Heredia, a noble and advisor to the king, chose the state as the ideal site for the construction of his palace. So you've got, architecture, winery, all combined in lots and lots of history. We're talking about 11th century going on history. You can find their wines in the US for anywhere between $20 and $110. Here's another view of some of the buildings, and again, this blending of the old and the new and this lush landscape is what characterizes this area of Spain. Another great monastery to visit here is the Monastery of Irak. Medieval, Renaissance, and Baroque styles. Irache is a Benedictine monastery of unknown origin. It was first documented in the year 958 AD. And the monastery became a landmark as a hospital for pilgrims en route to Santiago. So they're doing the El Camino de Santiago, and this was a hospital for the pilgrims en route to there. And again, it's ancient, it's from the 10th century. This monastery was declared a national monument in 1887. And they've recently restored the cloister, the tower, and other facilities. And there have been talks at some point of turning it into a parador. If you're not familiar with paradors is a collection of hotel properties that are owned by the Spanish government that are hotels in very historic places like monasteries and things like that, convents and other palaces that have been turned into hotels. So there's talks of turning the Monastery of Irak into a parador at some point, which would be fantastic. Here's another a couple more pictures of this beautiful monastery. Just a picture of the inside and the portico. All right, moving on, we would be moving on to Heredia. Talked at the beginning about the very quaint medieval fishing villages where you would see the contrast of the medieval streets with the cobblestones and, in contrast to the colorful houses of the fishermen. So Heredia is home to Chacoli wine. If you're not familiar with Chacoli wine, it's a white, little bit effervescent wine from this region, and it's very refreshing. It's a great summer wine, and so here we would visit the Chamin Winery, and as you see, the wineries over here in Heredia, they're all sloping downhill towards the ocean. It's really cool to see. So this winery, Chamin, it is located in the heart of Heredia and has maintained its dedication to cultivating vines and making Chacoli for generations. So like I said, Chacoli is a slightly sparkling, very dry white wine grown only in this region. You can find many brands, including Chamin in the US for between $15 and $20. And it's a great hot summer day wine. A really, really cool stop in right next to Heredia is the island of San Juan de Gache. So you might recognize this if you are a Game of Thrones enthusiast, because this was the island fortress of Dragonstone in Game of Thrones season 7. Gache means Castle Rock, and it's got a man-made bridge to get to it, which 241 steps that zigzag all the way up to the church on the top. And a fun fact about this area is that underneath the church, there are lots of caves where during the Inquisition, the alleged witches were imprisoned. So another great stop with some of a lot of real history and also fictional history with Game of Thrones there. Then another quaint little town is the village of Theraud. This town has its origins as a whale hunting town, which lasted the whale hunting into the 16th century. And then after that, it sort of, reimagined itself and became a leisure destination. And after the summer stays of Queen Isabella II in the second half of the 19th century. So it became popular after the Queen sort of kind of made it popular when she would come here in the summer. So Theraud is a beach destination in a much more laid back town than, for example, San Sebastian, which we would visit next. So here's a picture of La Playa de la Concha in San Sebastian. This is the most famous picture or beach in San Sebastian. And San Sebastian, or Donostia as it's called in Basque, it's very opulent and sophisticated. It's got the white sandy beaches. It's got lots of luxurious mansions. And this became the summer home for the very wealthy during the Belle Epoque. So this is when San Sebastian sort of exploded and all these, mansions were being built, and it's still a great summer destination nowadays. And here in San Sebastian, we would try a different type of wine. We would go to this Pedre de Ge cider house. The Pedre de Ge family had a traditional wooden press to make cider with the apples grown on their own properties. Originally, the cider they made was intended for just the family, but they did also start selling it as supplies for the regional fishing fleet and to the so-called cider taverns or cider houses. Today, the Pedre de Ge cider house is the perfect place to taste Basque cider and cuisine. It's out in the countryside, surrounded by apple trees, and it's only a few miles outside of San Sebastian. And last, and as a epitome of everything that we've been talking about, of this blending of modern and tradition, we would stop in Bilbao. Bilbao is the new modern face of the Basque Country. It's home to the Guggenheim Museum, another Frank Gehry building, and it's the center of the arts in the Basque Country. And it's a mixture of tradition and modern sophistication. And of course, we couldn't leave the Basque Country without doing a Pinchos tour. So Pinchos in Basque is what the rest of Spain we call tapas. So small plates. And as you can see here, the gentleman is preparing them, and then they're self-serve, and then you pay by the toothpick. So you bring your toothpicks to the register when you're done, and they charge you by the toothpick, so they know how many pinchos you had. So this is tapas in the north of Spain. So this has been our virtual tour. I hope that you have imagined yourselves traveling through this monasteries and this vineyards and wineries and tasting some of these wines. Hope that you go out and maybe buy some of them and taste them at home, and just imagine yourselves traveling to this beautiful part of my country of Spain. And I just thank you so much for watching here with Cultivating Connections Travel Planners. And it's been a pleasure to take you around on this virtual tour of Spain and the Basque Country in La Rioja. Thank you very much.